We can be so ego-driven in business, but ego is the quickest way to not be in business. Upsells, there's all that. There is something of leaving that margin for wow. A mentor sat me down and I'm complaining about the client. Like, damn, all these million changes and they want to do this. I'm like, I don't like any of this. This is awful. And he was like, are they the client? He was like, yeah. He was like, your job's to serve. Every opportunity I have to even shed light of who Jesus is through me matters. Welcome to the Faith Hustle Podcast, where we help young Christians learn how to build their business and careers God's way. I'm your host, Mukwenda. I've been an entrepreneur for almost 10 years, and I've had the pleasure to be mentored and advised by some of the most successful people, but also people who are highly and deeply devoted to the Lord. And there's an issue in our day when it comes to being in the world of business. There's a lot of voices, a lot of noise out there that are anti-scripture, that anti the things of God. And on this podcast, we choose to go deep into how we build, and we're building God's way, because everything we do matters, because it all brings glory to God. And so that's the focus of this podcast. We really focus on 5 pillars, 5 things that we believe that every faith hustle entrepreneur has in their DNA. Number 1 is being spirit-led. Number 2 is having integrity. Number 3 is having humility. Number 4 is being a great steward. And number 5 is being generous and having a generous spirit. And so if that describes you and something you're chasing and wanting to grow in, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're going to put out a lot more content, have conversations with people who are successful in their industries, but also carry that DNA that we just talked about, of having that well-roundedness of being devoted to Christ and also being devoted to their craft and to their business. And so we're excited to go on this journey with you. And today, it's me. It's a solo episode. I got my man Jason over here, my producer, and we're going to be talking about how serving leads to increase in your revenue. How serving leads to increasing your revenue. And you know, it's so interesting, you know, in business, especially in this time we're in right now, it's 2024, the game of the last decade has definitely been focusing on customer service. It's always been necessary, but even more so, customers demand it now. You know, convenience is the game we all play. And whether we like it or not, we're all driven by it. If a restaurant doesn't deliver or have an online app or online ordering system, most likely we won't go. We like everything fast, quick, speed, friendliness, and simple of ease in this market is how you win. And if you don't have that, you're going to go to the next guy that has that. Amazon, you know, Jeff Bezos, he famously says in an interview that they call it customer obsessed, that they are obsessed with their customers. And so they're wanting to do same day shipping is because they're customer obsessed, or how they handle products that, you know, if you have a problem with it, and how they do the exchange is because they're customer obsessed, or anything that's within their ecosystem. If we've all been impacted by Amazon, it's because of that. They have a single focus and a goal, that they're customer obsessed. And what business teaches of customer obsession and customer service, I believe God would call it servanthood, that he would call it being humble and being that of a servant leader that he was. One of my favorite passages of scripture is found in Philippians 2. I'm going to read it here, 2 verses 3. It says, "Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interest, but also to the interest of others. Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God as a thing to be grasped, but he emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men, and being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on the cross. And if I were to really, I've been in marketing for nearly a decade. I've done content for so many different companies, honestly all different industries. Kind of my background. When I started my business, I literally got to grasp, when you're starting, you just take on anything you can get, and you're just like, any business. And honestly, it became my MBA in a sense. It became my way of learning. And so I worked with grocery delivery services. I worked with restaurants. I worked with construction companies. I worked with tech firms. I've worked with finance firms all across the board. I've worked with so many different types of companies. And what I've definitely seen, because I've worked with companies that I've helped scale massively and, grow by 40%, in a matter of 6 or 12 months, make millions of dollars. And then I've also seen, unfortunately, companies go under, or maybe they had a really bad structure or whatnot. But the ones that either did really well or didn't do well, in my experience, it all came down to them paying attention to their customers' needs or their clients' needs. And a lot of it I can sum it to, and I think this is something we have to internalize as entrepreneurs, is sometimes we can get in business because we're making a product of what we want, or we're making the business that we want, which is great. But at the end of the day, if your customer doesn't need what you're providing, you're not going to have a business for very long. And if, I think in so many ways we can be so ego driven in business, but ego is the quickest way to not be in business. It'll keep you from actually paying attention to what's really going on in your ecosystem, what your clients are demanding, or what needs are they having. I worked with one company where they had a terrible feedback system. They had all these customers that were having issues with the products that they were giving to them, delivering to them, and they had no way of communicating them. And I remember I was talking to one of their customers just on accident. I knew one of them, and they're like, "Hey, by the way, I heard you're working with them. Can you tell them that they sent me some bad product, and we really want to keep using them, but we don't know how long we can, and we can't reach anybody." They didn't do any surveys. They didn't do any feedback loops. There was nothing. There's no system involved to get a pulse on how their customers were doing, how they're enjoying the service, what things they could do different. They weren't customer obsessed. They were scale obsessed. But in so many ways, the way you scale is one-to-one. You scale, sometimes we can have our minds so focused on the money that the way you actually grow is by, taking care of the thing that you have, the customer that you have. I used to work in an agency, and one of the things they used to say is, as far as, looking for more work, they would say, honestly, a lot of times the gold is in the client or the customer you already have. And so many times we want to get the new client, which is great, but we're neglecting the one you have. And then you have this retention loop where they're constantly falling off. Rather, if you invest in that one, he's going to tell the next guy, and he's going to stay with you longer. Does that make sense? And what I'm trying to get at is this. All of this comes down to servanthood. All of this boils down to, we serve others before ourselves. We think of others, just like the scripture says, highly before ourselves. And there's got to be, especially when we think of how we position our businesses to glorify God, what we just read there, that should absolutely be in the DNA of your business. There is no separateness of that's how I am in my community group. That's how I am, when I'm at church on a Sunday, but that doesn't translate on in my business or in my day to day. That's not how it works. It's got to be all in the same. If we want to grow our businesses, we have to take the mindset of a servant, and really take the example of Jesus. Servanthood is based on our love for God, and knowing we've been served by him. And because we've been served by him, because we've been compelled by the love of God, it actually should lead us to serve. And that's actually good business. I'll share a personal example. Again, like I said, I've been doing marketing for a long time, and I used to have so many different services. Over the years, I've really honed down, in the beginning, you kind of do a little bit of everything, some for desperation because you just need money. And the second, because you're trying to find your niche, you're trying to find what thing is going to stick, what's most profitable, all those different things. But I remember I was really gung-ho about consulting. Honestly, it was more of, I love helping people. I've always loved helping people. But it was really more of a selfish part because profit's amazing. The margins are super high. And I was like, man, I'm getting paid to talk to somebody and give them advice. That's amazing. And so I was gunning for it. I was looking at different training events to be a part of. And I was looking at, building a whole system around it. And I was pitching it. And when people asked me what I did, I was like, I do brand consulting and all these different things. And there's nothing against consulting. I love consultants. I feel like I'm still a consultant at heart in anything I do. But I realized, one, I had a frustration with consulting and the clients weren't really getting help that much. Part of it, in the nature of how I was doing it was, I would empower them with all this knowledge. And then a lot of times they wouldn't do anything with it. Which, in so many ways, that's not on me, but there's still that lack of fulfillment there of like, they're not actually reaching their goals. And then secondly, the demand was just not there. It wasn't really something that was, helping people, to the efficiency that it could. And I pushed for almost a year in that business model. Until one day I kind of had to wave the flag of like, okay, what are people actually asking for? Instead of me pushing something that no one's asking for, what are the actual needs that they have and how can I be a solution to that? And it honestly took me to swallow my pride, swallow my ego a bit and be like, all right, what's actually going to help this person? And it caused me to like, take a good look inside of like, okay, let me remove this ego here and actually focus to scale of what people want. And it grew my business. And I just shed a lot of stuff that I just didn't need to focus on. And it's something that we have to pay attention to if we want to grow. We have to shed something. So I got a few tips for us today to help you, some very practical tips and how we can apply this servanthood, this servant's heart into our businesses. Number one, before you launch a product, before you launch a service, before you launch anything, even a company, let's say you're a startup, do a survey. Have you done your survey? Have you done research with your audience? Have you conducted any type of studies and actually gone to people who could be your potential customer, your potential client? It's wild how many times, even when I did this for this podcast, I didn't just start it on a whim. It wasn't just because I had an idea. I talked to many people who were in the market who I was trying to target, and I was asking them questions. What are the hiccups you have? What are the concerns you have? What are the questions that you've always wanted answered that you didn't have an answer to? What do you feel is the bottleneck for you trying to be a Christian business owner? I asked all those questions. And so when we formed Faith Hustle, it was with a very, we knew there was a demand. We knew there was a need for it. And we started to, okay, here's a solution we're going to build around it, right? Instead of trying to build something that nobody wants. And I think that's the trap of a lot of entrepreneurs, is that we can build products, we can build services that we like, but no one asked for. And it's a waste of money. Like, one of the things I do in my business, I produce courses. One of the first questions I ask them is like, have you talked to people about if they would even buy it? Because sometimes like, oh man, yeah, this is such a need. And it's like, if we're not careful, we can be in an echo chamber of like yeses around us and not actually talk to the people who have the money, who have the actual problem, and ask them what they want. And it seems simple enough, but that alone could help. There's a lot of even things that you can do practically to look into that to help. You can do a Kickstarter. A lot of times, we can think of Kickstarters like, oh, we're getting seed money to do something. A lot of times Kickstarters are great to get initial feedback, to get feedback on product, to get feedback even on your marketing and your communication of like, are people gravitating towards it? If not, okay, how can we pivot the language? Where are they getting confused and, misstepping? There's a lot of things you can do. You can even do test marketing campaigns just to get a feel and split test, literally have the same product, different messaging with different needs that you're addressing and see which one people are gravitating to. You got to find different ways to get to the heart of the matter of what people are asking for and what are the problems that they're having. So that's definitely, I would say, the first thing I would recommend is, do research somehow, conduct a survey. There's different websites out there where you can conduct public surveys, but even amongst friends and family, and I would even be careful with some friends and family. You don't want a biased answers, right? But, have people who you can offer them $5 or a gift card or something just for their time, or they might out of the kindness of heart, help you. But I would just ask them specific questions so you can start to, fine tune it before you launch. So when you're launching, you have a better chance for it to go well, especially in that beginning stage. So that's definitely something I recommend. Do surveys, do research on your audience. Second thing I would recommend is, and this is just more of a mentality than anything, look for solutions to the problems before they ask. This is kind of how I see it. Many times, especially if you're in a client service business, someone comes to you for a specific need, you provide that. What's going to lead to the next line of work or the next product, or the next amount of revenue you're able to give is to think ahead for them. There are needs that someone will articulate to you, but there's sometimes clients and customers, they don't necessarily know what they need a lot of times until you present it to them like, oh, I didn't think about it like that. I'll give you an example. In my video production business, one of the things I give people, I do promo videos for them. And so, we'll do a promo video and most people would know, yeah, a good promo video is good to have. It's good to have something on your website that's, it's good for SEO, it's good for conversion when people come onto the website, but they usually don't think of doing a testimonial video, or they don't think of having some call to action videos for maybe their bottom funnel for their ads. And me just asking the question, have you thought about this? I've been thinking about, this solution for you in your whole ecosystem of your business. And one, they get taken back like, oh man, you actually really, you took time to think about my whole business, not just the one thing you were selling. Thank you, one. And then secondly, oh, you know what? I do need that. And then you just start that loop of curiosity. But if you didn't even think to ask what else they needed, you would just stop right there. And that's the only work you would ever do. It's so crucial. Even if you're in e-commerce or a product business, think of your customer and think of their lifestyle and what they do and all that encompasses their life. What are things that you have that you can offer to them that maybe they didn't think of? What are different problems that they have that you can solve? Because if you're just stuck in one thing or one category, you'll miss it. You'll miss different opportunities. You'll miss different moments where, for additional revenue, again, to me, where I've made the biggest bang for my bucks in my businesses was squeezing the life out of one client rather than just focusing on quantity of clients, which quantity of clients is good too. But it's like, hey, how can we maximize one? Because if they'll buy one thing from you, then they'll definitely buy a second thing from you. And if you do a good enough job, they'll buy a third thing from you. And you want to make those long-term clients if you're able to. But you got to think from the mindset of what are things that they need that they're not even thinking of that I can give them. Jason, I'm going to throw it to you. What is some of your thoughts, man? I know I'm going off a lot here. There's different, of these different tips. What kind of stands out to you so far?
Bro, I'm going to tell you, there's one thing that came to my mind when you were talking about this. I had a mentor of mine, and you know that I do like weddings. I do like videography, photography, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the very first time I did a wedding, this guy said he was going to shoot it with me because I'm like, yo, I've never done this before. Would you come with me? Da da da. And he's like, yeah, what's the plan? I said, oh, we're supposed to be there by 1. And he goes, what time does the makeup artist arrive? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I'm supposed to know that. So I found that out, and the makeup artist arrived at 8. And he said, we're going to be there at 8. And I'm like, but what are we going to do?
Right.
And he goes, we're going to hold purses if we have to hold purses.
Yeah.
He said, we're going to go get water if the bride needs water. We're going to help the groom unload stuff from the car and that kind of thing. And when he said that, I was like, holy cow, like that just changes my thought on everything. Like that's crazy. Like I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. And he said, yeah, we're here to help them. Like we're here to serve them. We're here to like, we're not just here to clock in, clock out, take a check and go, know? And he said, whatever time you put down for the end time, that probably won't be the end time.
Yeah.
Like we're probably going to be hanging out and helping load a car or something,
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people look at business and they go, oh, well, I need to this is what they're paying for.
Right.
Well, right. But what else can we do? In the same regard, I one time, we'll offer services like what we call a hi cam. So it's like you put it in the reception and friends can come by and like video and say hi. And one time we did that. We offered it as a service. They declined it because of the cost, and we gave it to them anyway. And giving it to them anyway, it's like, oh my gosh, like they feel so. Even if your pictures and video turn out like crap, they're still gonna be like, yo, like they're the best, they're the best. And so, and obviously videos and pictures didn't turn out like crap, but it's like, yo, like how cool would that be if we can do that kind of thing? And so I didn't even know what you were going to be talking about today. And when you started talking about this, I'm like, oh, dude, yes, I'm all about this because like being able to provide something not only like wins you better business, wins you more clients, and wins you more money in the long run, stuff like that. But going back to the faith of the hustle is the fact that it really does show Jesus. Like it's like here's what you wanted, and let me show you how much more I'm going to give you because.
Ooh, that's a word.
You know what
that's
I'm saying?
A word.
Like
absolutely. Jesus went over the top with us. He didn't just do the minimum.
Right.
Like for example, he could have just minimally gave us salvation, which would be amazing. But he was like, hey,
thanks, Jesus.
Guess what? I'm giving you the Holy Spirit.
Exactly.
John 14. Someone like it's better than I go because the helper's coming to help you to walk out this Christian walk.
Yeah.
And so, and again, in the same breath, if we are to be like Christ, it's not just what you do, it's all the intangibles. People often say it's not what you do that matters, it's how you make them feel.
Yeah.
Right? It's not everything that you say, it's how you make. And everything you're saying is so right. It's like, why would you show up at 8 a.m.? And I know people who are like, no, I'm only going to show up when I said I was going to show up. But there's no chance to surprise people. There's no wow moment.
Yeah.
You need wow moments in business. You need those, oh man, like you thought of that. You went above and beyond. I have a client recently. She's amazing. Samantha, if you're watching, shout out. I'm actually going to have her on the podcast pretty soon. Samantha Teal, she's the best. And when we did our first shoot with her, content shoot, she just started her business. She's a litigation consultant for lawyers, and we got her a series of social content for her social media. And one of the things I noticed was she didn't have a video for her website. And she's like, yeah, I didn't, and we weren't contracted to do it. It honestly didn't take me that long to do. And I said, you know what? I'm just include this for you. Make sure you put it on. And I followed up with her to make sure her web team put it on there because I'm like, it's going to help with conversions to explain a little bit more about what she does. That has helped build that relationship more than, oh no, if you want it, and of course there's upsells. There's all that. I'm not speaking against that. You should do upsells. But there's something of leaving that margin for wow. Leaving that margin of, man, they really... But the heart of it is just like, we love people and we want to serve them well.
Yeah.
Right.
Why not?
Why not? Right. Like if
Why not?
we're going to be doing what we're doing anyways, why not go above and beyond?
Mm-hmm.
And I've never worked well with people who do the bare minimum. I despise it, to be honest with you. Like, cause it's a bad spirit.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bad spirit to be around. It's like, I'm going to literally like, I'm clock in, clock out. It's a 9 to 5 mentality, but that's not the same in business. And if you carry that, one thing I remember I had, and I've had this happen multiple times, and I'm sure this has happened with you, where I'll get a client and they'll tell me, they're like, the reason why I hired you is because I talked to your other client and they spoke so highly of you and they talked about that you were the best and you gave them, and it always makes me think, man, the amount of conversations that are happening about me that I'm not in.
Yeah.
Rooms I'm not in.
Yeah.
And everything from your attitude to the way you deliver to all those different things. And I have to check myself sometimes. I've had times I've messed up. I messed up recently on a big shoot where with a client where we were able to redeem it, but I had a bad attitude. They had a lot of changes and I didn't like any of the changes. But I was like, and I literally got reminded from a mentor. A mentor sat me down and I'm complaining about the client. Like, damn, all these million changes and they want to do this. I'm like, I don't like any of this. This is awful. And he was like, well, are they the client? He was like, yeah. He was like, your job's to serve.
Mm-hmm.
So I think God's trying to work on your heart through this and try to position you to be like, hey, what is this all about? And who's it all for? If it's unto the Lord, it's not about you. If you take you out of the equation, you'll be fine. And once I did, I was like, oh, you know what? Yeah, there might still be some things that bother me. But you know what? It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
It's not that big a deal. I serve them if they're good, and this is not people pleasing. I want to just like, this is not being a people pleaser, but I think there is something to be said of having a heart to, I think really what it boils down to, at least how I look at it, every opportunity I have to even shed light of who Jesus is through me matters. And in a business context, any opportunity I can show people how I'm different is worth so much. Because that's your greatest business card, is how you show up and how you go above and beyond. That's how I've built my business on every experience, every client experience, going above and beyond. Have I been perfect? No. Have I messed up? Absolutely. But to me, that's always been my advantage of where maybe there's another company, they have way more budget than I do for marketing, or they have, an in here and an in here that I don't have. What I have is every opportunity that I have and I'm given, I can give it my all and go above and beyond.
Mm-hmm. It makes me think about the businesses that you used to see, and some are still around today, where they'll put like the fish on their car, or like the fish in their logo, or stuff like that. It's like, oh, we do that so people know we're a Christian company. It's like, well, gosh, why don't you just treat people good?
Imagine that.
Now, listen, that's no shade on anybody who has a fish, because they probably are treating people good. Yeah. But it's like, gosh, it's almost like that whole thing where it's like, preach the gospel at all times, and when necessary, use words. Yeah. It's like, gosh, let's just run our business like Jesus would want us to.
Yes.
And people are going to know we're Christians because of the way we do that. And then when we might get a chance to share the gospel with them, or we might get a chance to show them who Jesus is, or we might get a chance to, like, putting a fish on our logo is not. Now, I think some people use that because they're like, oh, I want to attract Christian clients.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's like,
which, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, right. Do we want to?
Right, exactly. It's like, if
only serve Christians.
Right, exactly. And sometimes they don't even pay that much.
Exactly.
I'm just keep it real with you. Listen.
Ministry.
Yeah, exactly. If that's what you're wanting, sometimes they're the lowest paying. But I think it's fun, and I'm not trying to call them out, but there is a automotive company.
Call them out. Sorry.
Hey, I mean,
sorry. It's fine.
Christian Brothers Automotive.
Oh, boom. Beep.
Christian Brothers Automotive. You talk about the most unchristian of how I felt treated.
Oof.
And it's more, you know what? I don't hold it against them, but it's funny because it's like, yeah, it's in their name, but their service was terrible. I was gypped. They tried to sneak out of the warranty that I was rightfully given. There was a whole lot of stuff that happened with my car, and they were playing Chris Tomlin in the in the lobby.
No.
Oh yeah, there was Caleb all throughout there. Yeah, Chris.
Okay, here's the thing. I'm gonna say something about this real fast because I just have to. It's like take the Christian out of your name. Like don't because here's the thing. If somebody mistreats you, and they don't claim to be a Christian, it's almost like we kind of expected that. You know, like if I go to a regular, or if I go to like a regular lawyer, or go to whatever,
right?
It's like, oh yeah, well, I'm not really shocked that you did that. People do that,
right?
But when you say you're a Christian and then something like that happens, or you do that, or you have a really terrible attitude, then it's like, yo, like you actually just gave a terrible witness.
Yes,
you just actually showed the way that Christians shouldn't be.
Your lack of service,
exactly.
It boils down to humility. One of my mentors, it's a funny story. He said he asked the Lord once. He's in advertising and runs his agency does 8 figures, and he was asked the Lord once. He's like, God, how do I build my business? Like I'm trying to grow and I'm trying to do my best and I'm trying to be a good witness. And all he heard God was like, charge more. Just and what he had to realize, he said he had to let go of his Christian nice guy syndrome and realize that how much he charged that's not necessarily equate his level of witness, but how he did his business, how he treated his clients, that does.
Mm-hmm.
Because, there's certain times if you charge too less, you actually don't have a good witness because sometimes you're not able to provide the best service. And you're not staying in business anyways. And so you do need to charge properly. And that has nothing to do with your witness, but how you treat people absolutely does. And I think that's really what we're trying to get at, is that all of it matters. And so you look for moments to wow people. You look for moments to go above and beyond. You look for moments to show, man, if these people in their business setting, there's that they can act like this, I gotta ask them what's this about. And I've had clients be like, we know you're a man of faith. We can just tell. Can you pray about this? Can you pray about this? We got somebody we need prayer. Like literally in business meetings. But really, again, I think it all comes down to having that heart of servanthood, having that humility. The last thing here, last practical tip for you before we close. One of the ways to have servanthood in your business is a solution for your customer or client may not involve your business. It may be connecting the dots that give you more influence. And I'll explain. There are many times I have passed away business to somebody else who I felt who could do a better job or was maybe at a better price point for them. And it always came back to reward me. And one, let's just say this. God is a rewarder of humility, of integrity. He's the Lord of the harvest, right? He blesses what we do in secret to him. Nothing's in secret to him. But I can't tell you how many times I get asked, because you have to have standards. You have to have, and we'll talk about this at another time in another episode, but you should have your do's and don'ts, your ideal customer, and having a system where you can scale it of like, hey, we do this, we don't do this. Here's who we ideally work with. Here's who people we really don't ideally work with. If you want to grow, you kind of have to. You can't just accept everything and everyone and, appease to everyone's price points and all that different stuff. And that being said, I've had many times where I'm like, yeah, I'm either too much for them Or even it might not even be about my price. They might just not be ready. Like, and I can tell, I've talked with people like, you don't need this right now. Like, I could sell this to you and you would say yes and pull out that credit card and be like, I'll pay it off. And I've told people like, you're not ready for me yet. And I would rather you be in a better financial place than, because one, this is a bonus tip. If someone is penny pitching in the beginning, trust me when I tell you, it's a sign that they most likely will be your worst client. Was that too harsh, Jason? Was that too harsh?
No, I've just been on the other end of that. I've been on the other end of that too many times, and I've also been that person once, and it sucks.
It does, because they're gonna look over every detail. They're gonna be in every bit of the weeds. They're like, hold up, can you prove that again? Can you and honestly, this is gonna be the biggest pain. And so you rather just say no or pass them off to someone who's just going to better serve them. Because, it's never failed. It has never failed. The ones that were beat me up on price, and it's funny, sometimes they can't afford it, but they just beat you up on price or whatever like that. A lot of times they end up being my worst clients. But
yeah,
that's so just be mindful of that. But outside of that, I have found personally that when I look over and really have the best interest of the client, even if it means that I don't get the work, God has always taken care of me. And many times it builds my influence with them. I get referrals from people who've never done business with me. But they're like, man, you know what? You took care of me. You could have, maneuvered it another way, but you looked at my best interest. You know what? I'm gonna look out for you. I'm gonna connect you with somebody. And it happens so many times. And regardless, even if it doesn't, I like to just sleep at night. I like to sleep well at night, knowing that I did the right thing.
Sleep's so good.
Sleep is great. It's underrated.
Yeah.
It really is in these streets.
It's really underrated.
And
unless you sleep all day and
Don't do that. Don't do that. But anyways, that's something that I would encourage you to do is, again, when you have that mentality, everything is unto the Lord, then even how you reject business is unto the Lord or not accept business. And God will reward you. Two scriptures that I pulled up. One, Hebrews 11:6. And without faith, it's impossible to please him, for whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him, right? He rewards those that seek him above themselves, above their own interests. James 4:10 says, humble yourselves before the Lord and he will exalt you. The path of humility to serve leads to, it leads to promotion. It leads to growth. When you put the needs of others before yourselves. Again, like I said, Amazon calls it customer obsessed. Airbnb and all these different, every company has their, language or culture vernacular that they've, summed up. Oh my, we love people. We're people. It's like they're just stealing scripture and just not quoting it. What it is you be like him. You become like Jesus, and it actually helps you in business. Who would have thought?
Amazing.
That you read this Bible, it actually helps you in every area of your life, including your business, including career. And actually, even just a side note, to even go away from just the entrepreneurial route. Let's say you're in a company, right? You're in a corporate structure. You're trying to climb the corporate ladder. What that could look like is, one, obviously going above and beyond, for your employee, right? As the first tip that we talked about. Second tip could look like you thinking of what your boss needs before he asks or she asks, and being a solution to a problem that they don't even know they have. That is going to promote you. But third, of being honest of what you can do, what you can't do. Obviously there's always, you take on challenges. That's how you grow. You put yourself in situations, but there are many times where it's like you can make, you always want to underpromise, overdeliver. And there's a lot of times where you overpromise and it just never looks good. And it's like, hey, if you can say, you know what, my schedule is kind of full right now, but you know what, Tyler would be amazing for this. He's incredible. He's got a great track record with this. I think he'd be great to take this on, and I'm going to help him and make sure it wins. That takes an extreme amount of humility. Especially in half of corporate America, a lot of times it's just politics. Like you're just vouching just to keep your job. Like you don't even get to do your job. That's why I'm an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. But again, God rewards in secret. He rewards the things that no one sees. And there are many, every day, there is opportunities for you to practice humility and servanthood and how you treat people, going above and beyond, and how you think of solutions that people didn't even know they had, or needs for needs that they didn't know they had. And then thirdly, looking beyond yourself of, okay, if I'm not the person for this, if I wouldn't be able to give my best, to be honest about it and not just, fake it till I make it. And that is a strategy. And sometimes that's applicable. But being honest and even celebrating other people's wins, celebrating, hey, this person, yeah, they did an amazing job. All those things matter. All those things matter. And again, I hope after some of these episodes that you've been hearing, you're getting the heart behind this. We're all about making revenue. We're all about increasing, your income. We want you to succeed. I'm a believer that believers should be the one with money. Who else to have money than a believer of someone who has character, who has the nature of Christ, who's going to be generous? Hopefully you already tithe. So you already got that in your DNA. Yeah, I want more believers to have more resources, especially as we go to the end times. I want believers because there's problems we got. We got kids that need to be adopted. We got a foster care system that needs a lot of help. We have, people dying of water crisis, of not clean water. We got homeless problems. We got a lot of issues that I believe the church and those who are business owners have the opportunity to handle with resources. So we are big believers in doing the necessary things to increase your wealth, to increase your revenue for your company, or to move up the ranks in the business that you're in, if you're in a job. But there is a way to do it, right? There's a way that seems right to a man and it leads to death. But God's path, talks about in Proverbs, the blessing of the Lord makes a man rich and he has no sorrow to it. That's what we're after. We're after that. We're after doing it his way because there will be blessings on it. Because when we try to pursue things outside of him, we don't think of the consequences that exist when we don't include him. We just think of the upside and the shortcut, and we don't see the consequences. And sometimes it's not a matter of, oh, I might not make as much money. There's a lot of people who've made money. The consequences was their family took the hit of it. Their personal life took their relationship with Christ took the hit of it. And you're left at an older age being like, man, what did I build? And so that's the heart. And hopefully you're starting to get more of that heart as we're getting into these episodes. But with that, man, got another episode down in our hands, man. Done. I love it. Well, hey, we hope you were encouraged. We hope you are equipped, and we got more of these coming out. And so, again, with these takeaways of being a servant leader, let's mull over this, listen to it over again and again, and this week, write down, see how you can implement this in your business right now. What are ways you can go above and beyond for your clients? What are ways that you can have those wow moments? And I'd love to see what you guys come up with, or how you guys are implementing this. Whether it's in the comment section, whether this is on YouTube, or leaving a review, or even sending us an email. I love to hear how it's working for you guys. So we love you guys. God bless. And let's get our faith hustle on. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of the Faith Hustle podcast. We hope you got some great value out of it and that it's going to help you in your journey of learning how to build God's way. If you want to join this tribe, this community that's on that same pursuit, we want to invite you to subscribe to all the audio platforms that you might listen to and to this YouTube channel. We're going to be putting out a lot more content just like this to help you to build your business God's way. So until next time, we'll see you soon.